Hello, everyone. This is Robert. I'm back here this evening on the Dynamis Pod with Coralee Zueff, and she is the author of 5-Star Service Advisor. And if you would, Coralee, go ahead and introduce yourself to the people.
Hi, thanks for having me on, Robert. I'm Coralee Zueff, and like Robert mentioned, I'm the author of 5-Star Service Advisor. It was my COVID project, but I've been in the automotive industry in many different facets for, 20 something years and counting.
Very nice. So when you said that you started off in the automotive industry, what was your first foray into it, and what was your age at that time?
Oh, I guess that would be, we all kind of get into automotive because either we have a family member or we accidentally fall into it. So I guess I won't go into my childhood, which, involves my dad swapping engines out of boats, being a stunt person, when I was a kid. So I was
Exactly.
always exposed to mechanical things or, working on a floating gas station. But I think my first initial professional thing was I was thinking about what to do when I was in high school, and in grade 12, I saw a poster on the door for Automotive Foundations program, and something clicked. I was like, I
I
should do
see.
that. And even if I don't wind up being a technician, then I'm still going to have a whole bunch of valuable knowledge. And I was already a car enthusiast, so it seemed to fit great.
Exactly. Yes. Being a car enthusiast definitely helps a bunch. I joke with the students at school a lot that that's kind of where a lot of us ended up starting at was we were
Mhm.
enthusiasts first. And I tell them that it's kind of like a black hole of that point where you just kind of pulled into it. And then there's really almost never any way out of it. I always joked like I've tried a couple different times to kind of get out of it and go do some other things, but I always end up back inside of it. So now I end up teaching automotive students. Similarly, with like a foundations type of a program, I teach EMS and it's engine management systems and same thing, it's exactly this. So as far as advising positions, what were some of the brands that you dealt with and what are some of the things that kind of led you to writing the book itself?
Well, I guess after I was a technician or took the foundations program, I didn't get right into advising. I was, in the shop and things were cold and heavy and I missed talking to people. So nobody at that time introduced me to, hey, you should look into parts and service advising. I was like, well, hey, I know so much about cars. You know what I should do? Go sell cars. So right out
Okay.
of school, I jumped into automotive sales. And again, that was great. I had great mentors, same as the foundations program. But when I was talking to people about their needs and finding a vehicle that suited the needs and the budget, I'd also want to talk to them about, how easily accessible things are under the hood, the kind of
Sure.
tires that are on the car, and the maintenance that's coming up. And I found that people weren't too keen on wanting to hear about all those things when they're purchasing a new car. Being in the industry, we know they should because there's a lot of surprises that pop up. But that's where I found myself next, is in sales, and it again wasn't quite the right fit, but then I got so much information from doing that as well.
Sure. So, what type of brand vehicle, or did you do used cars first, or how did you end up moving through that and then getting into like parts and service advising?
So the brand that I initially started selling vehicles with was Kia, and that was right after their IE commercial, if you remember that one for the
Sure.
Sportage.
Yep, I do.
So I sold cars at Kia, and then being a Dodge enthusiast from high school, I sold Dodges as well. But again, still not quite the right fit. And that's when something clicked. I saw an ad for a parts advisor at a chain here in Canada called Canadian Tire. And that's where I found my sweet spot. That was the fun thing. People would come in, plunk a random part down on the desk, and, maybe don't even know what it's called. And I'd have to go find something that met or exceeded those expectations, and that
That
was like
was
the sweet spot. And then
something very similar.
something that fit exactly right. People were impressed. The manager at that time, he was in charge of parts and service and realized I was having a great time in parts and suggested moving on to service. And that was like, the perfect fit. I had sales skills to be able to communicate with people about their vehicles and had mechanical knowledge while still knowing what's going on in the shop as well. Because I feel that's very important to understand what the technicians are going through and what they need to be successful at what they do.
Definitely so. So, Canadian Tire, how many tires do you think that local chain where you was at? What was your best month? What was an average month? That kind of thing when you're trying to sell. What was maybe one of
Hmm.
the most expensive parts maybe that you've ever sold?
Canadian Tire was many years ago.
I see.
That was before my older daughter. So that was like 17 years ago. So I can't remember numbers off the top of my head, sorry. But let's see here. One that would have been fairly memorable was just helping customers who are struggling with finding something or with their repairs and being able to make it happen for them. Really, warmed my heart.
Exactly. Yeah. Definitely helping people. I mean, that's one of the things that I think that the industry seems to be maybe waning a little bit on. When I talk to students that come to school, a lot of times they say, well, I got into it because I want to make a lot of money. And I'm like, well, you have to go backwards to being able to help people. Because if you look at it from that, everything else kind of falls in line with what you would want in your life is if you can help people. And, I explain to them, it's a service industry. It's not this thing where maybe it's romanticized about a lot of times, like, well, I'm going to be a really great technician and I can be, I can make tons of money and all this kind of stuff. And you can do that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the service aspect of all of it, I think, is something that seems to get lost sometimes in the shuffle. A lot of times you'll see them come in and they're all bright eyed and I try to explain to them, try to bring them back down to earth a little bit and say, it is a job. Like it's, you can have fun doing it, but there's still a little bit of an aspect of it that it is a job and you have to serve people in order to make that work out the way that you would like it to.
Not looking at like that vehicle as being like just a vehicle, right? Like especially during COVID when we
Exactly.
were deemed an essential service. This vehicle
Exactly.
coming in is somebody who is working at the hospital. This is a doctor's vehicle. This is somebody working at a grocery store. So looking at that vehicle is not being just the mechanical thing, but we are keeping those people functioning and going to where they need to be as well. So really like to remind the technicians of that because they don't always get that same feedback that we do at the counter. It's like, oh, this person is this, and they're eternally grateful that you got their car going so that they can drive their elderly mother to her appointments or get their kids to school or with whatever it might be the customer situation. So just
Sure.
kind of sprinkling those tidbits in there for the technicians as well and letting them know the good feedback that they get.
One of the nice things I like to tell them is to try to make it human back to them is Christmas time. Hey, you're going to get some things that come from the customer's heart that they make. And those are some really grand, memories that I have about the industry is working at a pretty small 4 bay shop when I first started out. And every Christmas we got cookies, we got pretzels, chocolate dip pretzels. We got all these different goodies that came from the customers that were happy that we actually took care of the vehicle. And I try my best to do exactly what you're saying is bring it back to a human level of I bring up COVID often actually. Because of that, it's like the essential worker thing. There was never a larger rift between people, it seemed like in my lifetime, than that whole essential worker thing. It was, oh, well, you're an essential worker because we need you in the pit or in the darkened shop and we need you fixing the vehicles. But then there were some people that were split off and sent home like you're not essential, but then they were still making a paycheck. And I remember seeing it on Facebook, the utter disdain and the people that were so upset about it, which I understand where they were upset. That makes no sense to do that to a people's. But that was one of the things that I've seen. I try my best to share those times with them because we teach 19-year-old kids. I call them kids. I'm almost 50. So it's like I look at them, I see me in them when I was an enthusiast and wanted to work on vehicles. And I'd worked on stuff all the way back, since I was old enough to hold a wrench, like you were saying earlier. So it's like I want to try to make it to where they understand that someone's liberty, their livelihood, their safety, all of that stuff ties back to their second most important investment in their life, and that's their car. I think that there's a lot of things that doesn't get shared in the automotive industry sometimes, and that's one of them is those things that are very, very important to the actual customer.
I always find too with coworkers and, I go on field trips to introduce high school students into trades as well, and
Sure.
always trying to pinpoint exactly, what trade they want to get into and why, or, if they're an automotive enthusiast, what do they like about it? Because we all
Sure.
have bad days, it's going to happen. So when you have that passion of why you got started into it, then, you can bring that out in a person if you see that they're down. Like, for example, I like to say I don't only work in automotive, I like to play in automotive. So I take my Volkswagen Golf R to the track and do autocross and open lapping days and things like that. So,
Exactly.
I would never get down and be like, oh, I just hate cars and in general, I always like to find that little flame inside me of why I love the industry.
Exactly. So I kind of do the opposite. I'll joke with them and tell them I hate all of them and they're all junk. But there's a huge but there, right?
Mhm.
They do make you money, and you'll get pattern failures and you'll get things that you have to work on that's like, oh, now it's monotonous. But it's not like you have to do that forever. And the same thing that you're talking about, like it's that flame, right? It's the spirit of like, oh, this is going to be really fun. Like I really like this. And the same thing you mentioned earlier is something I try to at least share with them is the line technician job may not be for you, like you mentioned, service advising, parts advising, going off into other industries. Our industry gets poached quite a bit by other industries that are looking for people that are passionate about stuff, that are hardworking, that know how to read a micrometer or that know how to read different measurement tools. All of those things go into all these other industries. And I always show them like videos about drag racing and, engine building and all these different smaller areas, these feeder areas that go off into these other partial parts of the automotive industry where they can go and they can be really passionate about doing those things also. Even rocketry. Like we just had a Hall of Famer that from the school that was like he worked really, really hard, got out of school, went, ended up with Ferrari and ended up working at Blue Origin. So it's like there's really not an end to what they're able to do with a really good foundational automotive industry, teaching their certificate. So that's one of the things that I always try to share with them as well.
Yeah, for sure. All the different opportunities that it opens up for you. You don't have to, stay at the technician as a technician working at this one shop your whole life. As we get older, our bodies break down and we're sore. So we got to come up with another plan and a way to adapt and change and grow and things like that. So that's a great thing about yeah, the industry is you can change and you can take these skills that you have taught them in school and they can take them somewhere else in all those different experiences and they all still count and are relevant.
Exactly. I get to teach that engine management systems covers pretty much the entry level of engine theory. And I get to teach them about pistons, connecting rods, big ends, little ends, crankshafts, all that kind of stuff, seals, gaskets. And then I get to go all the way into oscilloscopes and I get to go all the way into communication and all that kind of stuff. So I really like teaching that all the way through because it does really kind of, you get to see different light bulbs go off at different points of the 12-week phase. And you get to see different students go, well, I really got into this for this, but now I'm more focused on this part. And I get excited when I see that kind of stuff. Maybe a little segue into what's the last position or maybe one of the most memorable positions that you've had when you were dealing with the automotive industry? And then maybe a sidebar to that is, do you do a lot of training? Has that brought you into some training? Has the book helped with that kind of thing?
Yeah, great to sort of talk about how I've grown in my career as well and changes there. So I was managing a European import shop on the island that I live on for quite some time, probably close to a decade there, and moved from service advisor to service manager and doing everything there. And again, it was like a 4 bay shop there. And it'd fluctuate how many technicians that we had there. And like you mentioned too, really great thing about that is getting to know the customers and forming relationships with them and then getting those baked goods and handwritten cards and hearing all about what their grandkids are doing, and then as well being with them for moments of when somebody comes in and their spouse has gotten sick and has passed away, so we're
Exactly.
hugging there as well. So it's not just mechanical stuff. But during COVID is when I put together my book, 5 Star Service Advisor. So again, that's another thing you can look at being an author and publishing a book all about your experiences in
Exactly.
the industry. Because there really wasn't any training authority for service advising here in Canada. You're a licensed technician. Parts people get licensed as well. And to sell cars, you have to get licensed, but there's really no training authority for service advisors. So you have to have mechanical knowledge as well as sales skills. So I put everything that I'd learned in my, close to 20 years into the book because people would always ask me, like on job interviews, what do you do when you have angry and upset customers, right? Which
Exactly.
we've all had. And I thought about it. I was like, angry or upset. Well, what are they angry or upset about? It's taken too long. The bill is too high. Those are some common ones. I was like, well, if they're upset about those things, it's because I personally have screwed something up in my line of communication with them. I didn't let them know early enough that it was going to take so long and give them time to, find an alternative vehicle or make those arrangements that they needed to. Or I didn't let them know that, a bolt broke and it was going to take some more time, or we needed a plastic fitting broke or something like that, or plastic junction, we should say, you know,
Exactly.
and I didn't let them know that it was going to be an extra $50 or something. So I took everything, how I communicate with people and where I've screwed up along the way, and worked out so I have the least amount of angry and upset people possible, and then put that into the book. So hopefully everybody can learn from my experience there.
Exactly. So one thing that just popped in my head as soon as you were saying that was like the level of training. What do you feel like is the best level of training as far as like how many days a month, or maybe doing role playing internally inside the dealership, that kind of thing, when it comes to selling vehicles one part at a time, which is what I like to call service advising? What would you say is a good happy medium between burning out the service advisor as opposed to really seeing them flourish and doing really well?
So I'm seeing, like, I'm doing training now full time. So I'm seeing like
Uh-huh.
two different streams of people coming into my classes right now. I'd say like 60% are people who've been in the industry a long time and have some mechanical knowledge, and they're looking for sales skills, in which case I'm helping them explain things in different ways to different people. Like, they seem to have, a technical way of explaining things, but like, let's look at using examples, visual aids, so that the
Certainly.
customer could understand. We're looking at doing this brake fluid flush. I had one person, and they likened it to getting an IV in a hospital, and that was an example that the customer could relate to. So I'm working with the technical group on how to more creatively explain things at different levels. And then about 40%, I'd say, are coming in from customer service fields. They have great customer service, have been talking to people forever, and they need more assistance with the mechanical knowledge of it. And vehicles are changing all of the time, and so we're always gaining information ourselves, but looking at the basics of the automotive systems and then how to explain those to the customers. First understand it and then how to explain it. So usually with those groups of people, I'll help them with their basic understanding, but when they're in the shop, then to go out and see what it looks like on the car for themselves, so that they can put that into their own words to understand or to explain it to the customer. Because the customer knows, if we're reciting something as opposed to if we've put it in our own words and are understanding it.
Exactly. So if you're doing a training, is it like a 4-day training, a 5-day training? And how's that working? Is there anything that's catered?
I'd say mostly everything that I'm doing right now is kind of catered. I do have like can job kind of classes, like 5 that I'm rotating through every month. I'm attending some conferences where I'm delivering those live and in person, and we can have more of a hands-on activity. And then I'm doing private coaching for different shops depending on what their need is. Then if they require, ongoing and want to connect with other people in the industry, then I'm starting a group where we'll meet once a week and discuss topics and see how everybody's going about their week.
Exactly. So I've had a little bit of experience on the service advisor side. I started with Volkswagen. I was only there a very short period of time. We had a really big shakeup in the dealership, of course, which will happen sometimes. It was the general manager had been swapped out. So one guy got a promotion, another guy showed up, kind of like almost unannounced. So it was like a really quick thing. And then we had a service manager that was kind of leaving, or he either got fired. I'm not exactly sure what happened. But then I had ended up leaving there, and I went to Audi. Like, Audi was at a European brand area, like you were saying that you worked in. And it was like 16 brands. So it was like a 55-acre place, very prestigious. And once I got inside, I found out, I'm like, well, there's not any training at all. Right. So that was like the really weird side of it to me, is like, okay, well, I had some skills. I'd been a store manager at a Goodyear before, that kind of thing. And I'd sold to people, and I just tried to always treat people, it's the golden rule. I try to treat them like I wanted them to treat me. So it seemed like it always went pretty well. And I could deal with people also, as well as dealing with automobiles, which is kind of a little bit of a rare thing in our industry. So once I left there, like way later in my career, I ended up at like a Jaguar and Land Rover place where I was the service director. And I was still fairly green as far as a manager goes. And especially that was a pretty high hill to climb to be that person. But when I got there, I was dropped into 4 different training systems. I was already in college, and it was like, okay, well, this is a lot, right? And it was, we need you to do Dave Anderson Learn to Lead training. We need you to do Jaguar and Land Rover training. And then we also need you to do Sally Whitesell Service Advisor training. So like, a brush up. And I'm like, I'm being trained to death, and there has to be some type of a happy medium in between all of that. And it was just a lot. So if you see someone that's in one of your training courses who maybe is not as engaged or anything like that, what do you usually do to try to maybe snap them back into, hey, like this is our job, this is what we're trying to do? Like, how do you maybe revivify them or reinvigorate them to like love the position?
So I was just thinking about, analyzing the too much versus not enough kind of training and
Sure.
what kind of training people are getting as well. Some people learn great, watching tutorials on the computer and going through it themselves. Other people like, live in person. Other people like reading books. So if I'm doing training for people, I'll generally send out a survey so I can get an
Sure.
idea of how they respond to training. Like, are they hands on? Most people in automotive are hands on, visually, auditory, which way do they prefer learning, so that I know about the group that I'm going to be addressing and I can take that into account as well. And again, if we're doing ongoing training, checking in to see where people are at, like at the dealership, we can talk about how you're going with the training and if we need to increase it or if we need to decrease it as well. Because I think the worst
Exactly.
case is like if, like some shops I'm working with, if we're introducing a new skill, then you need time to exercise that, right? Like we want to, okay, we're talking about using examples when we're talking to people about repairs on their vehicle or explaining it in certain ways. If I give them a new concept, in the afternoon or something like that, they won't have time to put that into practice. Or if we're working on like walkarounds or telephone skills or price shopping customers, things like that, there needs to be some time where they can exercise that skill and then check in to make sure, they've got it, or see if we need to spend more time on it before we introduce something else.
Exactly. I would definitely agree with that. There's been times when I've watched and I've fallen into the same category. Like I was really kind of pushed out towards the public a little too soon and was very green at, especially a very prestigious brand like Audi or Volvo that I've worked at, that kind of stuff. It's like you can't be too quick to push someone into the face of the public. However, on the other side of that coin is they have to be expected to be able to produce dollars for the dealership, to take care of the customer, to be really, really good at that position, right? So I think that's a really good spot. Is it's very smart to do the focus group to find out how they learn those kinds of things. Because like when I get a new class in, I don't actually have the benefit of that. I just kind of have to pay really, really close attention the first couple days as I'm learning names, of course, too. That's probably the hardest thing so far I've been able to do is try to learn their names. But as I'm watching, I try to figure out who is it that gets stimulated when I'm just speaking or doing lecturing, or who is it that maybe falls asleep. But if I turn a video on, it's like, oh, if I turn Donut Media on or somebody that's really exciting for them to watch, with the kind of like the, what would you call it? The ADD, ADHD type of way that we watch things now. And I'm as guilty as anyone. I'd like literally watch YouTube videos all the time. I drive my wife crazy with it, actually. I'm always on there. So it's like we watch 2-minute videos or 20-minute videos or 10-minute videos, but I have to watch them really intently and find out, okay, well, who are the people that can do auditory, that do visual, that really come alive when I take them out to the shop and we do shop time. It's exactly the same thing. It's pretty wild to watch, to be honest. It's almost like a sociological experiment.
And trying to cater to everybody
Exactly.
isn't always possible. So,
No.
yeah, so checking in and see who you're catering to and when to switch up the activity, right? Because sometimes, like, oh, okay, we're just going to go for a walk now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just walk out through the shop and take a little tour and we'll show you some competency cars and some mock ups and all that kind of thing. Yeah. I
Mhm.
see that quite often. We usually do, I don't know, 30, 38 or so to we're seated for 44. We could do as high as 44. This phase is a little lower. We're like 21, but it's like you try to watch and see. And then it's like, okay, well, there's like one or two that I've not gotten a hold of at all. Like, what
Mhm.
is it that I can do to sit down with them, to talk to them, what is it exactly? And it may not be anything that we're doing at all. It could be a home issue. It could be a tiff with their brother or their sister, that they've moved away. Like loneliness is a huge thing. I mean, they move away and maybe they don't have the social skills at that point, maybe to make a new friend or make a couple new friends, right? Or I've seen the other way. They make so many friends that like you can't reach them at all in class. Like all of a sudden they're just having a great time all the time. It's like, wait a minute, like why did you spend the money to come to learn this? We have to get back to that, the basic part of it first. So yeah, I could imagine going out to dealerships, doing trainings, and trying your best to adjust, like you were saying, to get it back, where it needs to be at as far as the time spent there, the time spent doing role playing and all that kind. I think personally, me, role playing part of it was probably the best parts of the training I ever was taken during any of the stuff that I ever took. The role playing part in person was probably the most beneficial to me because it was almost like acting, but it wasn't acting. And it was like you could immediately go and use it. And I think that was probably one of the better beneficial things for me to do that.
Yeah, role playing definitely has its space in training. I always try too, like we start off with role playing and then try to get the service advisors to craft things in their own words. So I have my way of
Exactly.
explaining diagnostics, other people have their way of explaining diagnostics. I can let them know what I say and we can tailor it to the individual shop and then they can explain it in their own words. Because if I, just give you a written thing of how I do it and say to, do it that way, it could fall out of habit eventually, right? But if it's something that they've put into their own words, so that's really a part that I like to do as well. Okay, this is how I do it. How can you put this into your own words, what you're comfortable saying? And sometimes people
Exactly.
expand on it fabulously and condense it great as well, make it applicable to their shop.
Sure thing. One of the things that popped in my head as soon as you said the word diagnostic, I was in diagnostics for around 18 years and mostly aftermarket, but dealership, some Volkswagen, some things like that. And then management with Volvo, Audi, gosh, Jaguar Land Rover. So it's like, to me, one of the things that come up a lot in this industry is, well, my service advisor told me that this would take care of it and it would be completely fixed. And I get where customers get that kind of, that idea. But I like to always tell my students, I don't like selling things that way. And I know it sounds like I'm kind of backing away from it, but like I like to explain to them, like, here's where we've gotten to, here's how much time we've put into it, here's what we need to do to further diagnose the vehicle. I try to never actually promise that I'm fixing the vehicle, as difficult as cars have become to fix in certain cases, because it's not every case. But it's like I would never want to just call someone and tell them, hey, here's what the price is, here's what we're changing, X, Y, and Z. At the end of all of this, your car is going to be 100% fixed. I would never want to tell them that, because Murphy's Law reigns supreme, right? And every time you end up doing that, it's almost like you automatically have already pulled your pistol out and shot yourself in the foot. So what is your feelings on how to sell diagnostics? Because I think that's really a huge thing in our industry now with the free diagnostics that are out there, which are really not free. A lot of times you end up paying for that in one way, shape, or form. But what is your thoughts on the way that diagnostics are sold in our industry?
It's definitely something that needs to be billed for sure.
Sure.
Technicians who are diagnosing vehicles and not, being a parts canon have specialized knowledge and experience and training, and the
I
shop's
agree.
invested in equipment. So for us to get to the bottom of their issue, that costs money. And I always like to come up with examples. And the one that I came up with was, comparing the diagnostics that goes onto the shop to, a quick scan that a parts place is going to be doing, is liking it
Exactly.
to a blood test. So we go and we get a blood test and it'll tell us that, our iron is low or our triglycerides are high, right? Similar to a quick scan where we're going to, have a lean code or have an oxygen code or something like that. And
Exactly.
those two tests they tell us the area that something is wrong, but they don't tell us exactly how to fix it. So now we need to do further testing to figure out exactly how to correct it. So I like to use that
Exactly.
example for customers, and everybody gets that, medical stuff costs money as well. So that's showing that there is a dollar sign that's attached to that as well. So that's the example that I like to use when I'm talking to people and explaining what goes into the diagnostics. And then you mentioned too about the promises. And I like that as
Sure.
well, because I never tell people to, make these huge promises. If we've sold a job and we're waiting for parts to arrive, I never, if we're relying on a courier to get them to us, never make a promise that we'll have it done before we have them in our hand. I promise to update you, as soon as the part arrives with a better time frame, and then make a joke about how traffic's terrible and couriers are behind
Exactly.
schedule and things like that. And then was thinking of an example too, like, is this going to absolutely solve our problem? Like, you get a vehicle in that has a massive coolant leak through a plastic junction. You can tell I've spent a lot of time on plastic junctions. And,
Exactly.
say it's like exploded, right? It's like, well, we know there's a huge leak coming from here and we'll get that solved, but we can't do a pressure test on it to figure out if there's any other smaller leaks. So I promise you we'll get this large one taken care of and then pressurize the system to see if there's anything else going on. So always, I know there could be something, and then promise them, we'll get this taken care of, but there could be other things going on, and I promise to update you as soon as we have the part, as soon as it's been installed on the vehicle and we've done the pressure test.
Exactly. I think I really like that. It's like a strategy based diagnostics or strategy based repair goes into strategy based selling, correct? It's that
Yeah,
kind of
because I
thing.
can't promise that, that junction's going to take care of all their coolant leaks. And then they're going to be upset at me because I promised them
Exactly.
that it would take care of everything. And I don't want people mad at me for that. So I'm going to promise you what I can deliver so that they're not going to be upset with me later on.
Yeah, I think that's a huge area where it's like you really have to under promise and over deliver on a lot of that kind of stuff. We just literally went through our communications and employability skills lecture just a couple days ago, and all that stuff, of course, is fresh in my mind. And that was the first lecture that I ever actually delivered at the school, so it kind of holds a special place in my heart. It's one of those things where, like we were talking about earlier, if you're a technician or if you're mechanically have a mechanical mindset, it's like you can get out there and do these other areas. And I really enjoy speaking about and talking about what service advisors go through. I tell students continually, and they can have a different opinion of it, but I've got to do quite a few different positions. But to me, that is the hub of the entire place. And that's probably the most difficult job that there is inside the dealership or even inside the mom and pop or the chain stores. You're a central nervous system for the entire place because everything must end up coming through you at some point. Salespersons come to you all the time. The parts department, you're always talking back and forth with them. The customer has to be updated 10, 2, and 4 here in America. We do the old Dr. Pepper rule, right? 10, 2, and 4, supposed to update everyone. And I was never that good at that. I'll be the first one to admit, like my organizational skills were pretty lacking on that. But I always try to make sure at least once a day or twice a day, I got a hold of somebody to let them know. But I try to tell students that, like, you have no idea the mental strain that people are under when they're trying to sell those jobs, take care of people, and do all the right things. And I liken it to trying to be a concierge at a hotel. That's your job. That's to take care of the customer. That's to not lie to them, like you were saying. And that's to do everything you can to make their experience there well above anything that they've ever had when they went to have their vehicle, worked on.
Yeah. Well, I never thought about it as, well, I guess so many balls that you're juggling, communicating, with the
Yeah.
parts department, communicating with the customers, communicating with
Plate
the
spinning.
technicians. So you have to keep a lot of balls in the air and answering the phone and checking your email and now text as well. So we have a lot
Exactly.
of things to juggle, and to be able to manage those is some skills.
Definitely a bunch. So, in your book, is there a certain area that's in it? Is there a certain chapter that was more difficult to write? Or, like you mentioned, it was during COVID. So, I guess sitting down and writing it probably wasn't that hard as far as putting the words out on the paper, maybe an editing process that you went through. Is there something out there that those people that may want to write a book about automotive, is there something that you might be able to give them a tip or a trick on?
For me, I think writing the book was not the most challenging part. Once you decide to sit down, you can, if you have, you get the feeling that you're in the mood to write and you just go and go and go, or you block
Right.
out chunks of time for yourself as well. However you do it, you just sit down and write it. I find that's not the most challenging part. It's all the little bits and pieces that go into that, right? Like you mentioned, you have to do the editing. I, got some comics for mine. You have to have the cover
Yeah.
made. You got to do the pictures. You got to decide on the font, and all these little itty bitty things I think took just as much time as writing the book. Like I mentioned to you earlier, I have, two books that are pretty much written, sitting in the computer here right now, and got to come up with all the other pieces that go along with those.
Exactly.
So just
So
do
for
it.
the people that exactly, yeah, just go and do it. Exactly. Yeah. That's like I like with
Mhm.
this podcast. Like I mentioned, I was on with Lucas and David. I'm like, I could be doing this. There's no reason that I couldn't do this as well. And there's plenty of area for new people to come out into this and do these types of podcasts and talk to people that's in the industry. There's tons of area that you can go in all these different, directions that you could go into. So I'm like, I'm just going to do it. Like you just said, like the book writing thing. Where is it that people are able to get the book? And is there like any, what's the easiest way for them to get it? I guess is what I'm trying to say.
The easiest place to get it would be on Amazon. You just go on there and it gets shipped directly to your house, and I don't have to handle it.
Gotcha.
They take care of
Exactly. Yeah.
everything. They're great. And especially
Just
too, who knows
offload it.
what's happening with with the tariffs. I think you can buy it in Canada, buy it in the
Exactly.
States, buy it, in other countries, and doesn't seem to have the tariffs on it. So that's good.
Exactly. So like we had talked about earlier, the thing with the automotive industry is we're trying to be positive, trying to do things out there. So your book, I feel like probably would be a really great thing for people to go and get. Is there one thing that you'd like to see the book? What is its legacy? What is Coralee's legacy?
The legacy. Well, that one I think I'm still working on. I've
Sure.
got a couple more years to figure that one out. Really, the goal that kind of inspired me for writing it is I'd be in Facebook groups and I'd see service advisors, complain about how stressed out they are, how they have such difficult customers, they're having difficulty communicating with the technicians in the shop, and they want to just be done with it, and they're blaming everybody else. So my goal for doing it was really, I saw them, I was like, no, it doesn't have to be like that. Like, okay, just
Exactly.
try this and I swear it'll improve for you. So my goal would be trying to help service advisors improve their quality of life and to stick with the industry.
Very good. That's exactly right. And that is a difficult, difficult thing to do. Is there a place where people can go to get the training that you were talking about?
Yep. So my website is CoraleeZueff.com. I have a calendar on there that gets updated monthly with 1 to 2 hour classes that you can sign up for. Those are live.
Very nice.
I'll have an update for where I'll be teaching at some live trainings coming up later on this year.
Mhm.
And then there's a button where you can message me and send me a message if you want to chat about doing private training with your shop. We can do that over Zoom. And I also do in-person training.
Very nice. Now, I can't wrap this thing up without mentioning the fact that like LinkedIn, back when I was on LinkedIn a long time ago and was looking for different jobs and that kind of thing, is kind of how you and I crossed paths. Ted Ings of FixedOpsRoundtable.com, Marco, of course, all those people that are in this industry. I'm very thankful that we were able to cross paths and all that kind of stuff. And I've always enjoyed the posts that you've made. And I hope that I've been able to do the same thing for others that are in the industry. I've written a couple different things that were on LinkedIn back when I had my account. It's gone now. But hopefully we're able to do the exact same things. And of course, you're in Canada, I'm in America. But it's been a really great pleasure having you on this evening. Very happy that you was able to make it and we were able to do this. It looks like we've went quite some time now, it looks like. And there won't be much editing. There's not been any dead air and there's not been any ums and uhs and any of that kind of stuff or fumblings other than on my own part. Is there
Oh, I think
anything
I
you'd
made a
like to
couple as
leave?
well.
That's okay. Is there anything you'd like to leave with the people that, that'll be watching this?
Right. You jogged my memory about I was thinking about the Teddings Fixed Ops Roundtable when we were both
Sure.
on there. Not in the same segments, but it
No.
was the
Yep.
Wild Wild West one, I think, was the one where I first saw your video where, we
Yep.
got to
I
wear the
believe
cowboy
so.
hats and dress up. Those are super fun. If we can, put a hat on or a mask or something like that, then it just adds to
Right.
the fun.
And I'm pretty sure that's the one actually that I was seen by Cindy Barlow, the industry liaison out at Wyotech. And that was when I had on Marshall and I had on Joshua Taylor and then I had on Russell Wickham out of Texas. And it was a great time. And I've invited those guys back on to actually do kind of an update, maybe not with all three of them at the same time this time, but definitely having each of them on and give them kind of a full show of like, here's an hour, here's an hour and a half. Talk to everyone. Tell them what it's like to be a technician. Tell them some of the things that are frustrating. Tell them some of the things that are great. Because there's tons of great things that come from the industry. It's not just, it's a tough day. I mean, it can be, but it's like there's tons of things that are great in this industry. And I really want to do something that's positive in it. And like I said, that's kind of the reason that I sit here tonight in front of this camera. So
Right, I'll be
it's been
connected
great.
with Joshua next week, actually. I'm
Very
talking
nice.
at Canada's Used Car Week, doing a podcast about getting more young folks into the industry and how to plan field trips and have him come check out the dealership and get them involved and excited about it. So he's going to come and record that for me. So I'll get to meet him in real life.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Someday I may end up doing the same thing. We'll see.
For sure.